recorded live from Studio 12A in sunny Phoenix, Arizona. You're listening to the Josh and Friends Podcast.
Hello! Thank you for tuning in to the Josh and Friends Podcast. I am your host. My name is Josh. And in this week's episode, oh boy, I have a topic that is very near and dear to my heart. It is the music of one of the greatest rock bands in all of history, the Beatles. And to join me in today's conversation is another fellow Beatlemaniac with decades of knowledge under his belt. I remember listening to countless hours of the Fab Four's music with this guy back in high school. I mean, we had all their albums, we rocked all their t-shirts, we purchased every book and magazine we could get our grubby little hands on. It was wild, we couldn't get enough. Well, he is back, and we're about to tackle a pretty tough subject here, but I think we could do it. So without further ado, please help me welcome back to the show the man who joined me at not one, but two Beatles tribute concerts back in the day. He is the one and only Mr. John Rajcich. All right, Johnny, welcome back, buddy. How you been?
Oh, I'm doing pretty good. Didn't drink anything last night, so I'd be top level for you today. Very important subject.
Yeah, you got to be on your top game for this, man. I'm glad you came to play. So I wanted to give a little background on the two of us. You know, the Beatles, they were like a pretty big part of how we became friends. I just remember drawing pictures of the Fab Four in 10th grade. I think we talked about this previously, but we were like always just trying to make each other laugh, and it was pretty ridiculous, but it was a lot of fun. Do you remember doing that back in class when we were supposed to be, actually doing work?
Oh yeah, definitely. It was not only that, but random stuff. So I take it we're here to talk about the band and not the bug today, because I might have to come back. I'm studying, the bugs.
Yeah, I mean the Beatle cars are pretty sweet, but yeah, we are here to talk about the band. John, when did you first get into the Beatles? And who was responsible for getting you into the band? Because usually it's, of our age, it's usually somebody has to get us into listening to the Beatles.
Well, I mean, you couldn't avoid them on the radio and stuff. I was definitely getting into it more in my early teens, riding around with my sister Cheryl. I would hear a lot more of the rarer stuff from the radio back then, like Got to Get You in My Life, Good Day Sunshine. Yeah. Remember the horn sections on some of those songs, and those kind of pulled me in, but it wasn't really till you started making me mixtapes and showing me some of these songs I didn't even know existed. I got kind of blown away by that.
That's awesome.
And so that you dragged me in deep there.
That's awesome that I was, partially responsible for it. But so yeah, it's funny because for me, it was like originally MTV. I mean, kind of. So like, in 1986, they started playing the Monkees reruns on TV. Yeah. And then that's what initially got me involved with the music of just in general of the 60s. And I was like, man, this is fun. These guys are like, these songs are like really good and they're funny and blah, blah, blah. And my dad, he looks over and he goes, he knew that I was taking an interest in this. And he looks over and he goes, well, if you like the Monkees, you should probably see the band that started it all. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, yeah. And he pulls out his, old reel-to-reels and starts playing like the music of the Beatles. So, nice. That's how I got hooked in. And then, I got into Beach Boys and Stones and all that good stuff. But yeah, then when I met you, then things started really, expanding. We started like buying books and studying all their albums, watching like the anthology specials and stuff like that.
Yeah, we kind of fed off of each other.
Yeah, it's awesome. It was so fun because like, even though like they came out, 30 years before we started listening to them, it was kind of like discovering the Beatles all over again. It was cool. And I often try to explain the importance of the Beatles, and sometimes it's really hard to describe the Beatles to like someone that's usually younger, even though people, of all ages love the Beatles. But there's some people that are like, Beatles overrated, they suck. And I go, oh man, that's just not true. Because if you listen to the music of the Beatles when other songs and groups were putting out music at the same time. That is how you can judge how advanced the Beatles actually were, in my opinion. I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah, most definitely.
Yeah.
What the weirdest thing to me is all of this happened over a 7-year period, and
Right.
from 63 to 70, just the amount of music they put out and how much they changed over that period it just blows my mind.
Oh, it's insane. It's insane. And I even remember reading an article of Ozzy Osbourne one time, and they just asked him like, "Hey, what are your top 10 favorite songs?" And 6 of the top 10 songs were Beatles songs. And I was like, what? I'm like, that's crazy. Like, this is the Prince of Darkness. This is the man that eventually went on to, form Black Sabbath and he's credited for essentially creating heavy metal. So did you
love to see an Ozzy cover of an early Beatles song?
Yeah, right? Did you ever see the clip of him on Howard Stern of when Ozzy first met Paul McCartney for the first time?
No.
Dude, it's so awesome. It's gold. I mean, because you could tell that he's meeting one of his heroes, and he had never met him before. They just happened to be on the show at the same time that day.
Wow.
And yeah, and it's like so cool because like everybody has that one person where they meet, like Ozzy, I'm sure he's met, hundreds and hundreds of, celebrities, but when he met Paul McCartney, I've never seen Ozzy look so, starstruck. It was really cool. So that was kind of fun. But one of my favorite lines is when people say, like, how would I know the Beatles? I wasn't even born yet. I mean, yeah, I mean, that was like how many years ago? Like, that was like 50 years ago. And I was like, well, yeah, I mean, have you heard of Abraham Lincoln or Mozart or Elvis? You ever seen The Wizard of Oz? I mean, it's called history. And they had a massive role in the evolution of music. So, I mean, just like you said, they changed so much and so drastically and successfully throughout that time period of just a few years. It's mind-blowing. And just to expand on that, the Beatles over the years, when we would be listening to them, they were so advanced in their sound that they're a 60s band. They're just in the 60s. I mean, essentially, they released Let It Be in 1970, but they're a 60s band. So, like, they would play them on the radio, and they would mix them into, like, 70s and, like, 80s songs, and you're like, oh, okay, I guess it works, but, it's just crazy. I can't think of too many bands that can actually mix those songs from that era into more modern songs. So, yeah.
They just had so much going on in their songs. Like, each individual person had their own thing going on, and somehow their different parts work together so well. But you could listen to just the drums, you could listen to just the bass,
yes,
or the rhythm guitar, and it was separate, but it meshed so well.
It is. That's part of the thing too about the Beatles is they were recorded so well. There's a lot of bands, even like later day bands, that the mix is wrong and it doesn't sound good. And everything about them, from the productions to the audio engineering and the musicianship and everything, the way everything was pieced together, it just sounds so amazing. And that's part of the reason why they are still around as far as, kids listening to them. That's why they're so popular, is because it sounds so good. It's preserved so well. And, a lot of the music is just timeless. So with that being said, John, let us get into the music of the Beatles. And we are going to basically talk about each album. And we're going to go over the different albums that the Beatles released, kind of like in chronological order. And then we are going to select, I know it's going to be tough, but we're going to select our top 3 Beatle albums of all time with, a runner-up. So our top 4, essentially. So
yeah. And I believe you said it'd be easier to pick our own child versus picking our own favorite Beatles song. And luckily I have only one child. But
yeah, it's almost an impossible thing to do because they have multiple albums that could be considered 5-star albums. So it's kind of like, how I'm feeling today could be a deciding factor, like on which album.
I had to approach it with the method. Otherwise, it was going to be a futility and madness and, impossible.
Exactly. So let's get this thing started. So The first record on the list is the record that started it all. Released on March 22nd, 1963. The album is Please Please Me. And this is wildly recognized as one of the greatest debut albums of all time. And there's some interesting facts about this album. But what do you think about the album Please Please Me?
There's a lot of pleases on it, that's for sure.
They're like begging.
What's cool about it is the most cover songs on any Beatles album, but pretty much all the covers the Beatles ever did, and this may be controversial, but I believe sounded better than the originals. Props to the originals. Yeah. They were great songs too, but just the amount of production and sound they put into it really filled out some of those songs.
Yeah, there's some classics.
This whole album was done in one day.
Yeah, that's mind-blowing. They said that they recorded this album in less than 13 hours. That's crazy. Yeah. The whole album. And it sounds amazing.
Yeah.
It's wild.
And ended off on Twist and Shout with John tearing his vocal cords.
Yeah. And you know what? I don't know if that song gets enough credit because, it's an Isley Brothers song, I believe, right? And the original sounds good. But that song, the way John sings that, it's almost like you could take his vocals and it's almost like he has like a heavy metal voice in some of the music that he sings.
No, totally.
Because I'm not talking about the music itself, because the music is one thing, but the way he sings, he sings harder than some like metal guys that I've ever heard, which is wild. So yeah, in that one, he famously had laryngitis or something. Like where he ruined his voice. By the end of the
day, it was just vocal cords were just beat up. And
just shredded his vocals.
Gave that amazing. You could hear it in his voice. It just sounds torn, but it sounds so good.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's awesome. So yeah, they had that famous picture of them leaning over the stairwell, and that was inside EMI's London headquarters in Manchester Square. And I also I love when they went back in 1969 to do that same photo. And they're all like long hair and beards and stuff, and I'm like, whoa, that's so cool.
It reminds me of when they covered One After 909 on Let It Be. It's like old Beatles covering an early Beatles thing.
Totally.
It's just this weird contradiction that kind of interesting.
Right. Yeah. So like you said, there's 6 covers on this song and 8 original compositions, which it's almost like half and half as far as the covers go. And I think Rolling Stone magazine cites the original compositions on Please Please Me as evidence of an idea of a self-contained rock band, because they wrote a number of their songs. Like it was usually bands, they get songs written for them and then they go in and sing them with a group of sessions musicians and stuff like that. So they played all their own instruments. Essentially the main instruments, and then they sang all their songs and they wrote half their songs. So it's a fantastic album, and it doesn't get as much credit as it should, in my opinion, but that's because it's the Beatles. So you're competing with other Beatles albums. So
famously, Ringo didn't even get to play the drums on Love Me Do when the single came out. Yeah. Because George Martin was like, I don't know this cat. I'm just going to get a session drummer to make sure it comes out good.
Exactly. So I think this album has, what are the famous songs on it are, Love Me Do, Please Please Me. I saw her standing there with, when he's talking about like a 17-year-old and something like that.
There's a lot of uncomfortable songs that I would be very nervous to sing in karaoke at my age. I sang 16 You're Beautiful by Ringo when I was in my 20s, and wow, man, I almost had to walk off the stage. I felt so creepy.
I heard that he doesn't even do that song in concert anymore. He goes, I had to retire that one. It's just kind of weird singing that, even though that's like his biggest hit, I think.
I know, definitely is. I would change the age probably if I was to do it again.
Yeah, she's I don't even know how you do that, because it's teen, right? It's like she's 19.
You're my age.
Yeah,
you're beautiful.
You're 80. You're beautiful. Yeah. No. Do you remember the song? They used to always play this song in the lunchroom in high school. There's a Place. I don't know why they always played this in there, but that's...
I don't know. I never did eat
Oh,
in
you
the
didn't?
lunchroom.
Oh, yeah, you're right, because you went
told
home.
Me about it. And yeah.
I'm
and
like,
I always
who's
thought it was
always playing
awesome. They
this?
had like this deep cut Beatles song on that machine. I was like, what's it doing on there? But I thought it was so cool.
Yeah,
it was such a like easy song.
I think it was like his, back in the day they would have the A side, and then I think that was the B side. But so everyone would always play the B side of that because I don't know if it was like Twist and Shout, and then There's a Place or something like that. I'm not sure. I'd have to look that up. But anyway, yeah, I think it was the B side. So they would always like play that song. And I'm like, every day someone would play that song. And I'm like, who's playing this song? I don't know. But anyway. All right. So let's move on. So that's a great album. One of the greatest debut albums of all time. Solid album. All right. So next up, released on November 22nd, 1963, exactly 8 months after their first album. The title of this record is With the Beatles. And John, what do you think about With the Beatles?
Well, this is probably one of my least favorite albums. I do love a lot of songs on it, but I'd say all around it's like in between the Please Please Me, which was like them exploding on to the music scene. And With the Beatles, I feel like it's a bunch of transition songs.
Yeah, it's kind of like a true sequel to their first album, well, famously they're on the cover wearing all black and they're in their, I think they're in like turtlenecks.
I love that cover though.
Yeah.
Probably one of my favorites.
Poor Ringo's like, shoved down at the bottom. They're like, we don't have room for you, Ringo. Can you get on your knees and, take a picture? Yeah, there you go. Yeah, there you go.
I think he was just happy to be there.
Yeah. At that point, yeah, he's still a very fresh new face there. And weren't they were still pretty much gave him a song per album, right? On those albums there.
I always love the Ringo song.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. It's always
a
nice.
Nice little palate cleanser.
Yeah. But so this has some great, fantastic original songs like All My Loving and It Won't Be Long and the George Don't Bother Me.
That's his one of his first songs, I think, on an album.
Yeah.
Him singing.
Yeah, gotta like George, man.
I love the Don't Belong, the energy of that song.
Yeah.
Oh, man, that is great.
Yes. And
I could just see him in the Cavern Club just blowing it away with that song.
Right. And it also has a lot of covers again, but the covers, like you said, are still fantastic. Like Roll Over Beethoven and Till There Was You and Please Mr. Postman.
Mr. Postman.
Yeah. You Really Got a Hold on Me.
Remember that movie Backbeat we saw? We were like so excited for it back in the 90s. And that was like the finale song when Stewart's watching the band get big and they play that song. That was such a cool moment.
Yeah.
I was like, man, that was cool.
I think that's the first time I saw that movie. And I think that's the last time I saw that movie. Have you seen that since?
I believe I've seen it twice.
Oh, yeah? Yeah, it was decent.
It has been a long time.
Yeah.
I might have to pay it a visit again. It wasn't bad.
Yeah, it's all right. Yeah. And then it has Money, That's What I Want. Did you like the Lizards cover of the Money song? You remember that?
The Lizards?
Yeah, That's What I Want.
Oh,
yeah. It's like, okay. Yeah, super solid album. No sophomore slump here. I mean, hey, again, like what you said, it could be weaker in the Beatles albums in general, but for any other band, it would be their greatest album of all time, So
another thing I thought was real hilarious personally is I Want to Be Your Man. So that song was given to the Rolling Stones.
Right.
Who did an all right job on it, but then they recorded themselves and I think it's way better.
It is.
Obviously, I'm a Beatles guy, but I thought that was like, is that a power move or something, dude?
Yeah.
Hey, here, record one of our songs and then we'll just destroy it.
Well, at least they let them release it first, right? So like I think it was like the official like first Rolling Stones single or something like that, and I love that I've heard interviews with McCartney and stuff, and they would ask, like, so what was that rivalry of you and the Stones? Like, we were like friends. I don't know. Like they sing on each other's tracks and like all this stuff, like during the heyday. And like, they weren't like even enemies, but like people wanted to make it, like the good guys and the bad guys, which I'm sure the Stones love.
Everybody's got to create drama.
Yeah.
They were hanging out in each other's recording sessions, even like near the end.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah. So, fun fact, this is actually the first Beatles album to be released in the United States under the title Meet the Beatles, which I have on vinyl.
Yeah. I was always confused. I was like, is there another album? I can't find this other album.
Yeah, until you flip it over.
Back when I was,
And that particular album, it's kind of smart because they just threw on, some of their big singles. And, I think that they had I think it kicks off with I Want to Hold Your Hand, and it's followed by I Saw Her Standing There. And then it goes on, to the rest of the album and stuff like that. But it's kind of a smart idea because those are some strong singles that were released right around that time.
I was always interested between the US and UK versions, how much they could differ. And I've never really explored that, but it'd be nice to see, I've heard that the Rubber Soul US release is so different from the UK release that it's almost a different album.
Yeah, I've met people that say that the Rubber Soul US version is their favorite. And I'm like, I'm a UK Beatles guy. I stick to the UK releases because, I have some of the US releases on vinyl, but I don't know. It's just kind of like, I want the, do you want the knockoff made in Japan, or do you want the real deal? I'm a real deal guy, man.
Do you want a Guinness from the United States imported, or do you want to drink what they drink in Ireland there?
Yes, exactly. All right, so anything else you want to add from Meet the Beatles, or I'm sorry, With the Beatles?
No, man, I'm good.
Awesome. All right, so moving on. Now
we're getting into it.
Yes, Beatlemania is now in full swing in the United States. And this next one was released on July 10th, 1964, and half of which is the soundtrack of the movie of the same name, and the other half is originals. The Beatles album is A Hard Day's Night, which is a pretty fantastic album. How about you? What do you think about this album, John?
I love this album. I really wasn't a fan of the movie. It gets so much praise, but I've tried to watch it twice. And man, that Beatlemania stuff is just, I think I just get stressed out the thought of having to live in that. Man, they're better than me, man. I would have had to quit the band like a month into that.
Right. You're like, dig a hole.
Cool about this song? Yeah, this album's all original songs. Their first one, I believe.
Yeah.
And or at least most of them. Mm-hmm. And George updates to a Rickenbacker guitar, which becomes like the iconic sound of like almost the whole rest of the Beatles' career.
Right.
Which I really love, that Rickenbacker sound of, it's like clean, clear.
Yeah, it's awesome, man. So the movie itself, as you just mentioned, went on to become pretty legendary, pretty iconic. The final cost of production for that film was about $500,000. I think this is all adjusted inflation.
Okay.
And it ended up bringing around $8 million in the first week. And so
wow.
Percentage-wise, it's one of the most profitable movies of all time. I think with today's numbers, it's like $70 million or something like that it brought in. Like that's a serious turnaround in profit there. So
in a week.
Yeah. So
wow.
So this album actually contains one of my favorite personal early Beatles tracks. I Should Have Known Better. I love that song. Always loved that song a lot.
I'm with you.
Yeah, it's so good. And it's just Lennon is just, it's funny because like the beginning of the Beatles, like the first half, I mean, Lennon's always amazing in the group, but like the first half of the Beatles, like he was clearly the band leader, and then it slowly kind of turned into Paul. Like
he was credited with 8 of the 13 songs as the sole contributor on this album.
It's crazy. Yeah, he's definitely killing it.
Yeah, it's the transitions from John being like the dominant and writing the like most amazing stuff to Paul later on doing all the like super creative projects. And I think John might have been losing interest in doing all that crazy stuff that Paul was into, or he wanted to do all these concepts and weird shit.
Yeah, there's that famous story about Ringo and John. They'd be hanging out and like just chilling at the pool, and they're sitting there, and they go, at some point, we'd hear the phone ring. And then we just look at it and we look back at each other and we're like, that's got to be Paul. We knew from the ring that it was Paul. Because like Paul was the workhorse. He was the guy who was always getting them into the studio to do more shit. And like the other guys are like, oh, Jesus Christ, can we like take a break for a second? Or nope. Paul's like, we gotta get in the studio. We gotta get in the studio. You know, so yeah, I just thought that was kind of funny. Like you could tell too, because like Paul, like even like in his solo years, is just. I mean, how old is the guy? And he's like out. He's like, hey, we're kicking off another world tour. And I'm like, how old are you now? I thought you were gonna like start.
And he's still putting out albums.
Yeah, I know. I'm like I thought it was supposed to be like when you're 64, you're gonna start slowing down, and when you're old and yeah.
I think it's when he's 64 he picked up.
Yeah, exactly. So some of the top tracks on this one are obviously the title song, A Hard Day's Night, and Can't Buy Me Love. Did you like the movie, Can't Buy Me Love?
The 80s one?
Yeah.
It was fine.
A good old teen movie. And
man.
And I Love Her. That's a good song. And
that song just brings me down.
Yeah. And I love her.
It's so morose, man. Like,
and
they have the ability to like create such strong emotion with their sounds, and sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. You're just like feeling all peppy, and that song comes on. It's like, I gotta go home and cry, I think.
Well, what about Things We Said Today?
You know what's weird is a lot of these songs they're so different. Like that song is so different in the middle on the bridge. It like picks up this speed and energy, and you're like, whoa, where did that come from?
Right.
And it goes back into that fast strumming.
I remember listening to all these songs. Remember you had the back in the day you had the famous 5-disc CD changer, and we'd put it on random all, and then it would just start playing all these like random songs. And you're like, I think today's we're gonna put in the early Beatles, and that's what we're gonna be listening to for lunch. I don't know what you were making back then. Hot dog, nuclear dogs.
Probably.
All right. What else?
Radioactive nuclear dogs. I think probably two of my favorite memories off this album are basically from you making that original mixtape that I believe really got me back into the Beatles, and doing stuff like this where we're just talking about it, deep diving and exploring everything. They got that I Should Have Known Better, like you already talked about.
Yes.
And then probably my favorite was, this kind of blew my mind, is you put Any Time at All on there.
Ooh.
And not only just put Any Time at All, you introduced it with some song facts.
Oh, whoa.
And you mixed in your voice. It was like you're a DJ announcing it on the radio, and I was like, how do you do that? That's so cool. You're like talking about like, this is one of the first songs where John Lennon and Paul their vocals were switching back, and they're doing this call and response thing. And I was like, wow, I did not know that. And I was listening to it, I was like, he's right. I was like, wow, man, this is so cool. And I was like, I want to do that stuff too.
That's awesome, man. So John, do you still have that tape?
No, dude, I don't.
Damn it.
I think I might have one tape, and it's probably techno music I was into during college. But it probably got sold with my truck, so someone's got my techno disc out there somewhere.
Rest in peace. Yeah, no, I wish I had.
I know I got a few, but I think they all got warped and totally like unplayable. So I was cheap and would buy the 90-minute ones and leave them in the car. And since the spool was so fat on them tapes, we'd just take a small amount of warping, and then those things would just get eaten up.
Oh, well, rest in peace, all these old awesome mixed tapes we used to make.
Oh, yeah. One last little comment here. And so basically, John had quite a few creepy, almost scary albums where he was either stalking or angry or gonna get some revenge on some woman.
Yeah,
and
a lot of these.
One of those first songs, you can't do that.
Oh yeah.
But one of the best parts in this song it wasn't even on the album. It was on the Anthology 1 when it was one of the outtakes, and his voice cracked so bad. It reminded me of when Peter hit puberty on the Brady Bunch. It was good. some of the outtakes on that anthology were a lot of fun, even if
That's awesome.
just
Yeah.
give a listen.
Right.
Kind of
Oh, that's funny, man. All right, so next up, released on December 4th, 1964, the Beatles are starting to get a little bit more personal, specifically John. And the album is Beatles For Sale. And in my opinion, this is truly where I think the Beatles really started to change.
oh yeah, definitely.
Because, there's no more, there's still happy songs, because they're always going to have happy songs because of Paul. But this is kind of where, just as an example, like the first song on the album starts with, "This happened once before, when I came to your door, no reply." And then immediately the next song is John proclaiming that I'm a loser.
Yeah.
And then that's followed by Babies in Black and I'm Feeling Blue. So
yeah,
it's crazy. Like the 3 songs, boom, 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 right there. That kicks off the very mood of the album. You're like, okay, this is definitely not I Want to Hold Your Hand or She Loves You. This is some heavier stuff. So
you just look at the cover of the album and it just totally reflects the mood of the album.
Yeah.
These guys have been nonstop touring, getting chased by crazy people, nonstop interviews, and they're exhausted. So I'm sure that had a lot of play and just
and John is hiding his child over in England. So yeah, he has all that stuff going on.
Upset the fans.
Yeah. Hey, there's an image to uphold here, John. So yeah.
Oh. I forgot people do that.
Can you imagine being away from your son for like that long? That's pretty crazy. It's wild. But anyway, the only downfall really for me on this one is I think this is kind of where they kind of took a step back with the inclusion of more cover songs, which is entirely not really needed by this point, in my opinion, because they're pumping out so much music and releasing all these singles at the time. They could have just thrown in some original singles on here, in my opinion. And there's still some really good covers, like, Rock and Roll Music and Words of Love, and they're fantastic songs. But to me, like, if I'm skipping a couple songs on here, it's going to be like Mr. Moonlight and Kansas City. They're okay. But again, I think that the stuff that they were doing on their own was still better than some of the covers that they were putting on this album. But that's just me. What do you think of the actual songs?
Definitely agree. I think a crime for this song is, and I recently found this out, is I Feel Fine and She's a Woman were both recorded in the same session. And the fact they aren't on this album is kind of mind-boggling. Can you imagine?
Yeah, isn't that crazy?
It would have made it a lot harder for me to choose a favorite, but
yeah.
So I'm glad for that.
Right.
Some of those singles that aren't on these albums, it made it so much easier for me to pick some top 3 songs, because if those are on there,
and it's
just weird.
It's crazy too, because the Beatles, they have so many songs. They have more songs than any other group in history that were played on the radio that weren't even released as singles. Because usually a band, they're like, hey, this is our single. So boom, plays on the radio. But disc jockeys would just select a song and be like, this is just as good as their singles that they're releasing, So it's crazy.
And they didn't want their singles that were, the songs released as singles. They didn't want them on their albums.
Right.
They didn't even have that till later on. And they were, kind of upset that one of their singles was put on, I forget which album it is, but yeah, so that was kind of bizarre. Then you get these compilation albums later with the singles on them. You're like, damn, that's a good album.
Right.
What the heck?
Yeah. So some of the great songs on this album are obviously, 8 Days a Week, which is a single, isn't it? Was that released as a single? I think it was. Every Little Thing, great song. The little ditty, I'll Follow the Sun by Paul. So you could always tell the Paul songs. They're always
kind of very sunny, but you listen to the lyrics and man, they're pretty sad sounding about leaving and moving on. But if you're just listening to the sound, you're like, walking through the sunshine, sniffing flowers.
Exactly.
Just don't listen to the lyrics; they'll ruin your day.
They did that a lot. Yes, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, which is crazy because they're always just writing so much music, and That's part of the reason why they're so great, though, because I think, it could be. I know that a lot of these songs, George Martin would be like, you know what, that'd be sound like a lot better if you were, pepped it up a little bit, like made it, sound like happier, which just brings us to the next album.
Had a real fun Ringo tune on here, Honey Don't.
Oh, I love that song. That's a great,
like,
yes, that's a good one.
Rock on George one time for me. Do-do-do.
Yes. That was like one of my favorite like Ringo songs. Ringo always has like the fun songs. How can you not like Ringo? It's like, we have a song here that's kind of like, it doesn't really work for John and I, but Ringo, he's like, I'll do it. You know what I mean? It's like always kind of like, it's always kind of like the fun songs, Oh, yeah. And it kind of fits his personality.
Yeah. It's kind of the Peter Tork.
Yeah. Exactly.
I always kept wanting to compare him to that, but basically it feels like Peter Tork is the Ringo.
Dude, that's a great analogy.
I mean, that's how he's portrayed on the Monkees, so it's like you can almost like envision Beatles in those places.
I never thought about that. Mike is clearly John Lennon, and then what's his name?
Who's Davy Jones?
I guess that's George. I don't know.
It feels like Nesmith is probably more George because he's a serious dude with the pom-pom hat.
Well, okay, maybe he's a combination of George and John, because John's
Welcome
like
to our Monkees podcast.
Yeah.
Where we can't remember.
Yeah, exactly. So, all right, another great, in my opinion, these are all pretty solid albums. So another good album by them. All right, next album on the list is released on August 6th, 1965, which is also the soundtrack to their second film. The album is Help, another huge hit for the band, and kicks off with another massively successful personal song by Lennon, which is kind of like what we were just talking about. It was like, I wish that I could have heard that demo that he took. I don't know if he took it to George Martin, but it was like, very slow and kind of like, help, I need somebody, and, but I wish that I could hear that original version, which I wish that was on the anthologies, but
I know
it's not.
I keep hearing about it.
Yeah.
Probably on a bootleg somewhere.
Right. But I guess we'll never hear that because I don't know if it was ever recorded, but famously they sped it up and they made it all super happy and turned it into like the theme of the movie. So Lennon actually was interviewed by Playboy in 1980, and he said that, the whole Beatles thing was just beyond comprehension. And he was subconsciously crying out for help. And you could definitely tell by the lyrics in that song that it's just like you said, man. It's like heavy, but it sounds like so fun and poppy. It's like it's great, and that's part of the.
I mean, it's a big turn from the generic pop lyrics, and lost love, new love, desired love. One of my favorite songs or parts off of Help is how the backing vocals were actually introducing the next verse.
Yeah,
when I was younger, when I was young. It would start off with the backing vocals, and then the verse would follow what the backing vocals just said. I was like, wow, that was interesting.
Gosh, I remember we used to have these conversations back in the day that the Beatles had probably the greatest backing vocals of any band still ever in history. Man. And the way that they used their backing vocals in these songs is just mind-blowing. Like, if you really break down some of these songs, they really play with it in future albums here. But yeah, they start to really incorporate that kind of stuff into their albums, and it's really cool.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of backing vocals.
Yeah.
And they did amazing. It'd either be complex and it'd sound good, or it'd be simple and it'd sound good.
Right. Yeah.
Just the different combinations of their voices. Sometimes one would sing high, or they'd sing the exact same thing in unison.
Yes.
It's just they did it all.
Yeah, it was awesome, man. Like, they're so good. So like I could see bands like, I remember was it like Crosby, Stills and Nash talking about like how when they listen to the Beatles, they're like, man, we want to be like the Beatles, man. Like their songs are just so good, and like the layered vocals and the way they sang together, it was just so awesome and magical to hear. So some of the key tracks on this one, Lennon penned the song You've Got to Hide Your Love Away, which is clearly Dylan-esque.
But yeah, they're very influenced by Dylan during this period.
Yeah, Ticket to Ride.
Country western sounds, and definitely comes across.
I always like those songs too that just start off with them singing the chorus, like, "You're gonna lose that girl." Yeah. I was like, whoa, okay. All right. Yeah. Help. It's like, whoa. Okay. Yeah, It's Only Love. Isn't that?
Yeah.
That's a good song. Mm-hmm. And then you have Paul, like one of his best ever songs, I've Just Seen a Face, is awesome. And the most famous tune of all on this album is Yesterday, which
right.
The most covered song in history with over 1,600 recorded versions of that song.
Oh my gosh.
Isn't that crazy? 1,600?
Rich off the royalties from that song alone.
Seriously. Good Lord. Yeah.
What's funny about that song is, was doing a little looking into that, and Paul claimed the song came to him in a dream, and he was worried to record it because he thought he was plagiarizing another song that he was just remembering. And so they had to do some deep digging, and they had to be, I think George Martin had to convince him that it wasn't another song before he was willing to perform it.
Wow. And famously, it was actually called Scrambled Eggs at first.
Yeah. I was like, what?
Scrambled eggs.
It was just a placeholder or something, but
yeah. Maybe it's easy to remember that way. I don't know. I don't know.
And when during their concerts, the rest of the Beatles would famously just leave him, introduce Paul, and just walk off, go have a smoke a doobie or something, whatever they were into.
Yeah, isn't it John like introducing him like, and you in the top gonna shake your jewelry or whatever? I don't know. Yeah, but Ringo has Act Naturally, another just awesome Ringo song on this record. It's amazing.
Classic Ringo.
Yeah.
It was a great karaoke song.
Yeah, exactly. They're so easy to sing, and they're happy-go-lucky songs, that, I mean, who doesn't know Beatles songs, right?
Yeah.
What did you think of the movie Help?
I actually really love the Help a lot, even though a lot of people do not. I mean, it was in color for start, so that was a big up for me. I do like colored movies.
Right.
So quirky and bizarre.
Was that one in the Bahamas?
It was everywhere, dude. They went from the Alps to the Bahamas. I forget the other place they went to, but yeah, there was a lot of pot smoking and just weird goofing off in that movie. And this is just some of the goofy things they did just made me chuckle. Like one scene, they're all on one toboggan sliding down a ski hill, and they're doing this weird laugh all the way down the hill. And I'm like, I don't know what they're doing, but it's hilarious to me. So,
yeah, that's their.
I do really like that album.
That's a fun.
I own
that's a
it
fun
on DVD, so
oh, nice.
I'll watch it later.
Yeah, maybe I'll have to check that out again. I haven't seen that in a long time. I think I'm not. Hey, just to be completely honest and transparent here, I think the last time I saw that was with you. That's why I can't remember too many scenes from it. But I remember that we did like it. So I remember we watched all their movies one time, and we were really confused by one, which is going to be coming up. But so.
Oh yeah. A few notes of a few other songs on there is You've Got to Hide Your Love Away by John.
Mm-hmm.
I think it may not be as successful as Yesterday, but I think it compares pretty well.
It's a great song.
Plus the little flutes at the end are a nice touch. They make me want to frolic a little bit.
Definitely. That's a good song. Yeah.
Ticket to Ride, man. I really love this song. The drums by Ringo.
Yep.
They're so different than anything I ever heard. The leads. Yeah, it's just like this weird drum beat. And it's like, and then it changes up in the middle.
Yeah, like
so good.
There's a lot of things that Ringo does not get credit for, and he has some really good songs that he drums on, which he does a lot of cool different stuff on. And there's a lot of older drummers that really give him massive credit for the drumming that he did. But then there's the people that don't, because they're just into the speed drumming. Stuff. Yeah. So, but yeah, and he's always kind of like famously oh yeah, Ringo. Yeah, he's like the the one that always people make fun of in the group, but whatever. All right. Okay. So up next, another another giant. Another giant. Another giant leap musically for the band, released on December 3rd, 1965. The album is Rubber Soul, famously the album that blew Brian Wilson's mind. John, what do you think about Rubber Soul?
So something important about the date of this album. 10 years after it came out, I likely had my first poop as a human on this earth
Whoa.
day after I was born.
That's awesome.
Babies do that kind of thing. So yeah, they're quickly coming out of the Beatlemania area, and
Yes.
their lyrics, the instrumentation, and creativity is just like going through the roof.
Oh,
And
man.
songs are becoming more difficult to play live, so they're kind of. I think I saw a clip of them playing Nowhere Man live, and I was like, man, that's just weird to see them playing some of the songs off this album live because it was so hard to reproduce.
Right.
So they're slowly transitioning away from, live performances into that Sgt. Pepper era where they said, we're done. Screw you guys. We're in the studio now.
Dude, it's oh, man, you want to talk about backing vocals. It might be,
oh my gosh.
It might be the top album for me as far as their backing vocals on this album. I mean, the harmonies on these songs, like You Won't See Me, Girl, like you said, Nowhere Man, Michelle, In My Life. There's so many great, if you just listen to the backing vocals on these songs, just alone. I mean, the songs are obviously amazing, but the backing vocals, I love backing vocals in these songs. I don't think people talk about this enough with the Beatles. I think they inspired a lot of people to start using backing vocals in songs.
Yeah, thankfully, man. I do love backing vocals. So.
Yeah, and as mentioned, this is the album that Brian Wilson heard, and he was blown away, and he was like, you know what, man, I gotta make an album that can compete with that, because that's just mind blowing. Yeah, so this was their 6th studio album, and it's filled with a lot of acoustic rock, and there's not too many weak tracks on this album.
No.
Some people say that What Goes On kind of like doesn't really belong here, but I've always kind of liked that one. It's early kind of like country rock, rockabilly. What about you? What do you think about this?
I don't know, man. Lennon Starkey vocals. I don't know, man. That's just weird.
It is kind of weird, right? To like hear that song in the middle of all those like songs that are so different, and then you're like, oh, I guess we're back to 1964. Okay.
Like, throw maybe Paul's voice in there too or something, man. It was just a weird combo in my opinion. But yeah, I mean, I love the intro guitar on that.
Ding, 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 ding.
Yeah. It was definitely a country ballad, man.
Yeah, definitely.
That good old country.
Yeah. Apparently, this album also inspired the Stones to release their first album of songs completely written by the band with Aftermath in 1966, the following year. So it inspired Pet Sounds and Aftermath by the Stones. So yeah, George Harrison, he had some pretty strong songs on this album. If I Needed Someone and Think for Yourself, I think those are pretty solid songs.
Yeah, I mean, If I Needed Someone's on his greatest hits.
Yes.
I was like, wow, it's so good that you had to put a Beatles song on the greatest hits.
Right. Yeah.
Norwegian Wood was his first sitar song.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And
didn't he say that he
making its way?
Didn't he say that he's like, I thought I heard him in an interview like talk about how he couldn't even listen to that song because he played it so poorly. But as an American, I don't know. Sounds good to me.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Drive My Car, fantastic Paul song, and then probably the most iconic song on that album is In My Life, which is it's like the first masterpiece
song. I learned about the solo on there is George Martin wanted to play like a harpsichord style solo on there, but he couldn't play it fast enough to match the rhythm, so he slowed down the piano to half speed, and then he sped it back up to full speed, and it sounds just like a dang harpsichord.
It's so crazy.
They're like quickly becoming like these studio magicians.
Yes. And listen, anybody that claims that anybody other than George Martin is the fifth Beatle, you're insane, because that guy did so much stuff. That guy did so much crazy stuff. Like he arranged all their orchestra stuff. He played piano on some of their stuff. He even did an entire side of one of their albums. The guy was amazing. Like he was nuts. He was just mind blowing. The fact that a guy that I don't know how much older he was, like 20 years older than them.
Yeah, something like that.
You know what I mean? Like that can relate to these young kids that are making this music. But I guess if you're making music that's that good and advanced, and they're willing to mix in kind of like stuff that he suggests. I mean, it's just a perfect marriage of just music. I don't know.
Yeah, I
It's
bet
just,
George Martin had no clue he was going to come out of World War II and end up, working with the hugest band
right.
in pop music history.
It's crazy.
I mean, they would come to him and Paul would be like, "Hey, this is what we're trying to achieve," and he'd be like, "All right, I'll figure it out." And
Yeah.
he'd get it done. And
It's insane. It's insane. That guy was a genius. All these guys are just nuts. They're just, and it's one of those things where, I mean, how many times have you seen a band that they're wonderful together and then they break up and then they try to do their, solo thing? They're all right. They do okay. They do okay. The Beatles did better than, a lot of the groups that broke up and went solo. Certainly Paul. I mean,
oh yeah.
Geez. I mean, he had giant world tours with, 3 bands. So, but it's wild when you can find the magic of the engineers and the producers and the musicians and then trying to fit all this stuff together and it working perfectly. It's just crazy. I just
like a super group that started out as a couple of kids playing skiffle.
Yeah, it's nuts. It's nuts. So what else do you have about this album, Rubber Soul?
Well, Run for Your Life was another moment where I'm like, wow, John.
Yeah.
Wow, I think I'm going to call 911 and slowly back out of this building. He's threatening to murder this girl.
Yeah, right? Yeah, I think didn't that song get banned in Canada? It got banned in countries.
That Norwegian Wood, he wants to burn down the girl's house because she's not putting out. And I'm like, damn, son.
Yeah, John was an angry guy, definitely. Yeah. And the funny thing about John, he's clearly the most honest of all the Beatles.
Oh, for sure.
George is, he's the quiet Beatle, but Paul is like the best actor, I guess. As far as real life, he's like, oh no, everything's fine, and then Ringo's kind of just goofy, like always waving his head back and forth, and then John is like an angry dude, but he admitted that he's angry, he's a dude, he's an angry dude with issues, John definitely has the most personal songs, which if you go to their solo albums, all their first solo albums, his album tanked, but going back, listening to it now, you're like, wow, dude, this is some serious stuff. This is some deep stuff. It's
Plastic Ono Band.
Yeah, it's crazy. So, all right, man. So let's move on. Next on the list. Now we are dead smack in the middle of the Beatles' middle period.
Yep.
And this album was released on August 5th, 1966. And the album is Revolver. John, what do you think about Revolver?
Oh man, it's I'm probably going to say this on every album we get to from now on, but yeah, this is amazing. It's got so many songs that I had never heard on the radio or anything. So I'm sitting here, I was buying albums one by one after we were getting into them. All these albums that had songs I never heard, and this one was probably one of the ones that had the most songs I never heard on it.
Yeah.
But I'm like, each song was coming on, I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. Next song, oh my gosh, this was amazing.
Yeah, it's wild. At this point in the United States, being a kid listening to the Beatles albums every year, when they're coming out, by this time you just have to be like, oh, so the Beatles are already releasing their next album. Okay, well.
Can you imagine that now, having your favorite band release just this bombshell album, not even a year later sometimes. You could have babies quicker than you could get a new Beatles album. I mean, it would take longer to have a baby.
Right.
I got the math back.
Yeah. Yeah, but at this point in time, how many albums in is this now? 7 albums or something?
Yeah.
So at this point, you got to be all right, so this is where they have to be, start trailing off. Every band has a peak, and this is where they got to start, their decline. Oh no, this is not the case for this album. So this album, it pretty much invented, well, I don't know if it invented the genre of, psychedelic rock, but at least popularized it. For sure.
Yeah. And they were getting into the psychedelics right now. So it definitely, I'm sure, likely had an effect, and the people they were hanging around with probably helped influence them to get more into that psychedelic state of mind.
Yeah, I think that a couple of them cited Frank Zappa's "Freak Out" that they heard, and they're like, "Man, we gotta get into some of this psychedelic stuff. It's kind of cool stuff here." But yeah, like that song "Tomorrow Never Knows." That's the last song on the album, right?
Yeah.
And there's some crazy innovations on that song. Like they used like reverse recordings. Like,
Yep.
dude, it's trippy,
guitar
man.
leads,
It's awesome.
freaking chanting in the background. I would never listen to that song acoustic. It's just one chord repeated over and over again. But somehow they took that one chord and like the monotone singing by John mostly. I mean, as far as the Beatles melodies go, it wasn't all over the place like normal, but I don't know how they did that. It's very spooky.
It sounds like, without being on drugs, it sounds like you're on an acid trip.
Yeah.
And like the fact that they could actually somehow produce that, or at least what it sounds like it would be like on an acid trip. Like I want to go back in your basement, turn off the lights, flip on that black light, and just like look at your crazy stuff on your walls. Like, you know what I mean?
The closest we were to ever taking drugs was listening to Beatles music.
Totally. That's awesome. That's awesome. So yeah, I think this is the first album where George's stuff is kind of like right up there with Lennon and McCartney, with Taxman and Love You Too and I Want to Tell You. I love the fact that I think I didn't even know this until a couple of years ago that McCartney played the solo on Taxman. I was like, whoa.
Oh yeah,
that's crazy.
I just learned that too, and I was like,
yeah, because like I guess like
so
George kept like trying to do it, and it was like screwing up, and then Paul like just goes, let me give it a try, and it's like, dang, dude, crazy.
I mean, you can almost tell once you know.
Yes, yeah, isn't that funny? Like you could tell like guitarists the way they play the guitar with certain songs. Definitely. But yeah, so I mean, this has some of Paul's strongest stuff on here for sure. Eleanor Rigby.
Oh man, that song.
Yeah,
is so hauntingly beautiful and was like so full of like despair. Like the one line that got me from this is Eleanor Rigby dies in the church and was buried along with her name.
Yeah.
I mean that's some deep sad shit right there, man.
Okay, what's going on over here, guys? And then he comes out with good, then the opposite of that is like Good Day Sunshine.
What the heck, dude?
Yeah.
Where was he at?
I don't know, but yeah. But then he's like, and then he goes and does like a Motown song with Got to Get You Into My Life. And God, I always love that song. Love that song.
Horns coming in to play in these albums. I was
so
a
good.
Huge fan of the horn arrangements.
Yeah.
And so they're just like building more and more some of my favorite stuff.
Oh, definitely.
Background, I've always loved horn arrangements, backing vocals, good leads, good clean leads, and it's like they're on the incline still, and it's
And then Lennon, his favorite song by McCartney is on this album, is Here, There, and Everywhere, which is just nutty, insanely good. It's one of my favorite songs by Paul, certainly with the Beatles. It's awesome. Love that song.
Oh man, yeah,
so good. Yeah, it's like one of those songs that just like it just starts. He's like, you're like, whoa, okay.
I know.
All right, I guess we're starting the song here.
That song is so familiar. I don't know if there's a cover done in the 70s and I'm remembering it, or
probably.
Like I have these like weird memories of not that version, but of some like 70s smooth jazz dude or whatever yacht rock kind of stuff.
Yeah, it could be.
I keep meaning to look for it, but
well, now we're gonna have to search for it.
Childhood memories of listening to the radio while you're driving around and
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it could be. It could be like
I don't know.
Kind of like what Earth, Wind, and Fire did. Got to Get You in My Life from what the was that from the soundtrack of Sgt. Pepper, or am I thinking of something different? I think they released it as a single. I don't know. Okay, I'm just going nowhere here. All right.
The I'm Only Sleeping song is like,
oh yeah,
dude, it just was like spoke to me because I feel like sometimes I'm just a human beanbag and I just want to sleep, float downstream. Like I'm living the life of a Snorlax Pokemon.
yeah. The Lennon.
Let me food and let me sleep.
There's some great Lennon tunes on here, dude. Like She Said, wasn't that famously he was like doing drugs with what's his name from Peter Fonda, right?
Yeah. Yep.
And then And Your Bird Can Sing and Dr. Robert.
this has got to be. And your bird could sing.
Yep.
Man, the guitars on there.
Yes.
Oh, it's just fantastic. I mean,
Yeah.
it's like drives the song. It's like, I don't know.
Totally.
Did you remember the outtakes from Anthology 1 or 2? I can't remember, but
That probably is true.
they must have been stoned on, and they got a case of the giggles.
Yes. I do remember that.
Paul's just giggling.
Oh my God, you're right. I totally
goofing
forgot about
around.
that.
I love that.
Yes, that was great.
Cracks me up. Had some of them jazz cigarettes.
Yes, jazz cigarettes. That's awesome. Totally. All right. Anything else about the album Revolver? Classic
We're
album.
missing one big thing.
Oh yes, of course. We got to talk about the Ringo.
Submarine.
Yes. How can we forget Yellow Submarine?
Well, we can't.
It's a great
It'd
song.
be against the law, I think. This is one of the 2 Beatles songs I can play and sing at the same time. I used to sing this song to my kid when he was a baby, and so it's kind of a good memory for me. But I mean, I know we're going to cover it later on the Yellow Submarine soundtrack. But
Yeah.
such a great.
It's great. It's fun.
Ringo song.
It's
got
definitely
that
fun.
Voice crack later on in the there's always that one part where he says, "In my yellow submarine." They left it in. I always thought that was awesome. It was like even their mistakes were cool.
Yes, exactly. And that song's great because they start doing all those sound effects and stuff like that, where they just sounds like they're on a submarine.
Yeah, a yellow submarine.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's a great song. And again, give the we don't know what to do with the song. Like, what should we do? Like, John, you want to sing this? Fuck, I don't want to fucking sing the song. Give it to Ringo. Okay. So no, it's fun. It's kind of like almost like a children's song, which makes sense because you're singing it to your child. He's a baby. All right.
It's about my vocal range too.
Yeah.
Ringo's about my vocal range.
In the time that I was born. All right, moving on to the next one. So probably the most iconic album on this list due to the, creative album artwork and, we're
just the whole package.
We are kicking off the legendary Summer of Love. And this was released on May 26th, 1967. The album is Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. John, what made this album so great?
How long do you want this podcast to be? So basically the story of this album is they wanted an album to be performed by a fictitious band. Mm-hmm. They came up with Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. And there's some backstories on that, but I don't really want to go into it. I have enough room.
Yeah, their alter ego. Yeah.
Basically gave them the freedom to push their musical boundaries because in their heads, they weren't the Beatles anymore. They're Sgt. Pepper. So they were going all in on the creativity, the experiments. These songs were taking way longer to record now just because of what they were trying to accomplish. And they were specifically designed not to be able to play live because they were done touring, man.
Yeah.
So they're like, oh, we're gonna engineer that touring right out of the equation and make these songs hard. We can't play them live.
Right. Yeah. So many music experts recognize this as the first fully realized concept record in rock. Wow. And I think isn't it the first album to have lyrics printed on the inside? Yeah. So. And this thing's packed with gems. So if you just want to start off with basically like you were saying, it took so long to do this album after they stopped touring because, John opened his big mouth and said, we're bigger than the Beatles or bigger than Jesus or something like that. And anyway, they started getting death threats and blah, blah.
And it was true, but whatever.
Yeah, right.
I'm not going to go into that.
Exactly.
They sold a lot more albums. They got everybody to buy their album so they could burn it. I think it was a brilliant marketing move.
Right, yeah.
And they didn't have to tour anymore, so
you're acting like they came up with that idea to
I mean, they were brilliant otherwise. Why not?
Right. Yeah. So the two songs that always kind of stood out for me on this album were the ones that sounded so different. Can you imagine listening to this album for the first time and hearing being for the benefit of Mr. Kite? It's what is am I at a carnival? And didn't he he just read that off he found some old poster from the 1800s? And
literally just found an advertisement, a little post for a carnival.
So
And
crazy.
he just took the characters off of there, made up a little more lore in it and made a whole song out of the dang thing.
So awesome.
I mean,
And then,
they were just coming up with amazing ideas just from stuff like trivial stuff around them. The day in the life was John just reading the paper one day and he's like, okay, I'm just going to write a song here. I'm going to be one of the best songs ever. Let's see what's going on in the paper today.
Right. Or is that about Fall McCartney? Just joking. All right. No,
that's a whole nother episode.
And then my personal favorite on this album has always been Fixing a Hole. I love this song. I just love this song.
It's so different.
It's so great. The sound of that song, I'm like, what? It sounds like I'm in the 60s. Like, it's so good. And I don't know. You know what? I always picture myself as a teenager in 1967 and buying
a
this
boat on
album.
the river?
Yes, in a boat on the river. With tangerine dreams and marmalade skies. No, so
Yummy.
yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, but remember, like, we would stand on, we're at the kind of like almost like the tail end of people standing in line buying albums, when they,
Right,
you remember that? Like,
I
when they
did that a few times.
Yeah, but you don't see that anymore. Obviously, like, albums are so different. I mean, they're not even, they do have record stores are coming back. People are starting to, buy albums and stuff like that, but not like it used to be.
No, not at all.
But buying that album and then taking that out, putting that on the turntable, putting that needle down, listening to these songs, you're like, what? Whoa, what is this? This is wild. Like, it'd be crazy. It'd be so amazing and magical to listen to these songs. And in my opinion, we kind of got the best of both worlds because we were able to discover this and we had all our own music going on at the same time. So, we didn't exactly lose out or anything like that. But, hearing that for the first time is always kind of like a cool thing. It's kind of like,
it's so weird to think. I mean, we were in the era of grunge, which was this amazing musical revolution era, but I was deeper into the Beatles during that time with all
at the very beginning,
amazing scene around me.
Yeah, exactly.
And, I still was really into those other bands. Mm-hmm. And so I was wealthy in music during that era, that's for sure.
I mean, we had a lot of studying going on. We're like just going back and forth, trying to, oh God, what is it? Alice in Chains? Oh God, what? Like, oh my God, this is like my head's hurting from all this, like trying to, juggle all these bands and trying to catch up. I think of it to me as catching up because, after we got fully entrenched in the Beatles, then we're like, okay, well, what next? Oh, they had solo careers in the 70s. Okay, well, now started to buy these albums and blah, blah, blah. So, yeah, so it was always kind of fun. It's always fun learning and then discovering all these new songs and figuring out all these like little facts about these songs. But this is wildly regarded as, if not their greatest album of all time, certainly one of the top albums they ever did. And this album is definitely McCartney's baby. Remember we were talking about how it was just John's band back in the day. And I think like 8 of the 13 tracks he either wrote or co-wrote on this album. And so, I mean, this is another one where George Martin really comes in to play with this album as far as the recording process. And
probably every little subtle thing you like on this album was
totally
due to his engineering. And
it's crazy. It's wild. It's wild to just, I mean, you could watch all the different documentaries on this thing and it's still just mind blowing to even try to comprehend how they did this with, they had 4 tracks at this time still technically, but they had like techniques for, bleeding songs into, record onto like a track and then take that track and like record it, like they had ways of doing different things, but it's still wild because it's still at the very beginning of kind of like rock and roll, They're only a few years into like rock and roll as far as the, recording crazy stuff like that they were doing.
4 years since they were, first on the scene.
Yeah, it's wild.
4 years.
So this was a tape. I got this for my birthday. My buddy Brad bought this tape for me in 1987. It was the first Beatles piece of music that I had. And it was on a tape, little cassette tape, if kids remember what those look like. Anyway, I just remember I pulled this out and we were listening to this and we were like, wait a minute, stop that, rewind that. Can you rewind that? And then we pulled out the lyrics and we started reading it. And it was that part in, what's this, Getting Better? Mm-hmm. He's like, I used to be cruel to my woman. I beat her and kept her apart from things that she loved. Man, I was mean, but she's changing my scene. But hey, you know what, John? I'm doing the best that I can. So I guess
I actually put that in here.
Yeah.
I put that in my notes.
Well, it's funny because I always thought that because it's Paul singing most of the song, right? But
Right.
I guess that John was the one that he put those lines in there. And because, we're going back to John and his, lovely record with women.
Yeah.
He used to treat women pretty poorly, and he was ashamed of his past behavior. And that's probably why he went into the, peace and love movement, the full other direction. But yeah, so I didn't know that he had actually contributed that part right there, because it's like it. You really catch those lyrics because it literally slows the entire song down. It's like, and they're like, oh, they really want us to hear this part. Okay. And then when I heard that for the first time, I was like, oh, what's going on here? At least
then it goes right back into the upbeat part, and you're like, what did I just hear?
But
I'm glad he's doing the best he can.
Yeah.
But you want to know another famous part about those lyrics right there?
What's that?
The old Josh and Neil Borkwin plagiarized them and put their breakout hit, Geraldine Jelly Bean. That was a pretty good song, actually. I remember jamming to it with Franco in the basement. You sang the lyrics. I think we could have went somewhere with that, but
Geraldine Jelly. Oh my God, that's so funny.
as long as you got a laugh out of you, I'm good.
That is really funny. But yeah, no, so that's another one of those songs though where the backing vocals on that song are fantastic. Like John is like almost talking back to Paul when he's singing. He's like, it's getting better all the time. And then John's like, it can't get no worse. You know what I mean? Like, it's so great. And then another example of them using backup vocals in a song that they talk back is the second song on the album, With a Little Help from My Friends. And it's so good. I'm like, obviously it's like one of the greatest cover songs of all time. It could be like in the top, probably the top 5, maybe the top 2. Anyway, but that song, the original Beatles song, is so good because he's like, Ringo's like asking questions or no, are the backing vocals asking questions and he's answering? Or it's so good. I'm like, whoa, like, has that ever been done? Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's so great. I love it.
From that Rock and Sgt. Pepper's right into With a Little Help from My Friends, introducing Billy Shears, and here comes Ringo with by far his best performance on Beatles. I mean, he hit that big high note at the end, which he was surprised he was able to do. He was like, he was not going to do it, and they're like, no, do it. It's like, all right, and he did it, nailed it.
Yeah, isn't that the one too where like he changed some of the lyrics in the song, like because he's like, I don't want people throwing shit at me, like if I'm singing this later down the road. So he's like, I'm gonna change that lyric. I don't know what it was like, throwing tomatoes or something. I can't remember what it was, but he's like, how about we not put that in there? Yeah. Throwing tomatoes. You imagine people throwing tomatoes at a Ringo Starr concert. He's like, fuck this guy, man.
Drums. That'd really mess up his drums. It'd be all muffled sounding.
Right.
End up with ketchup by the end of the show.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess if he was on one of those spinning stages and it like, he's turned around and they're throwing it like while, his back's to them and they're throwing it that way. Yeah. If not, then they would have a plexiglass thing. Like, okay, time to raise the plexiglass because he's about to sing the Tomato Song. So get ready, folks. Get ready. Oh, you know what? There's one thing that reminds me of this album. And it was the fact that you were not a huge fan of one of the songs on this album. And that song is She's Leaving Home. You used to hate that song. And you're like, oh God, this song. And I'm like, so do you still feel that way about this song today as you did back in the 90s?
No, I mean, not at all. It's a great song. I think the fact it was just such a bummer. What my notes for this right here say, too sad. Next. But yeah, it's a great song.
It's so great. I love it. I love that.
I mean, the thought of the girl leaving home, her parents are left behind, and dude, man, I don't need to cry today.
Oh, it's so wonderful. I love it. Yeah. So, are there any other, I mean, look, the whole thing's it's a masterpiece. I mean, come on. Like, it starts off with Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, and it ends with possibly the greatest song they ever did with A Day in the Life. I mean, it's so good.
Yeah. I think one of my favorite little snippets and little factoids is the little short Sgt. Pepper reprise right before Day in the Life.
Yes.
That just epic drum beat.
Yes. And it's a great little rock segment. It's so good. Yeah,
and
it's
then,
awesome.
did you know that drum beat was sampled by the Beastie Boys and used on their Sound of Science?
Yes.
On Paul's Boutique. First time I heard that album, I was like, that's the Beatles.
Yeah.
And then it had the end in it too, the guitars from the end. I was like,
it's like the most sampled album still, like, to this day.
Out, man.
It's so crazy.
You know how much royalties they'd owe for that album?
Oh my gosh.
Had those laws in place.
Oh my goodness.
But yeah, Day in the Life, easily one of the greatest.
Yeah.
I mean, just between the John's part and Paul's part, you're like, that's like two different songs, and
yep.
You know, in between is like this storm of orchestra.
Definitely. All right, so moving on, John. We have the album that was actually released as a double EP in the UK and a full-length LP in the United States. And this one came out on November 27th, 1967. And the album is the Magical Mystery Tour. This is that one that I remember watching the movie with you that one time, and we were like, what's going on? Like,
I was so excited. It came on like PBS.
Yeah, because the album was like super good, but then we're like, like, what's going on here?
The movie was an acid trip or something.
It was definitely not A Hard Day's Night or Help. That's for sure. So
it was a bunch of music videos trying to be strung together with narrative, and it didn't work.
Weird bus trip. You're like, what's going on here? This is a weird tour. So, but yeah, this is that album that had side one had all the new music from the soundtrack,
right.
Which are fantastic songs, and then side two had all the singles released, previously that
all
year.
The blockbusters.
Yeah. So Hello Goodbye, Strawberry Fields, Penny Lane, Baby You're a Rich
Probably
Man.
one of the only albums where side two was way better than side one.
Right.
I mean, side two is darn near greatest hits.
Yeah, right.
Half a greatest hits album. The side one had the songs from the movie, which there is pretty good songs from the movie on there, but not to that extent.
I think my dad once told me that this was his favorite Beatles album, and it's great.
It was for me for a long time too.
It's awesome. Yeah. So I mean, I always love the title track on that album. Like it starts off awesome.
Yeah.
It's badass.
It just punches you in the face. It's like
it's
just
so good.
Starts off heavy.
Yeah. It's like how do they? There's bands that can't even create that sound today. Like I mean, how do you get a sound that good? I mean, I guess it's George Martin, man. It's just awesome. It's crazy. So
it's like the Colonel's Recipe. You're never gonna know.
Yeah, and one of the greatest tracks ever, certainly by John, is "I Am the Walrus." Great song. Sitting on a cornflake, waiting for the van to come.
What yellow mannered custard dripping from a dead dog's eye?
Yeah.
I mean,
it's so great.
I'm about to hurl in my mouth listening to that song the first time.
Awesome.
And just trying to figure out what the hell he was talking about. And this is where I was thinking this song may have been direct influence to Beck.
Yes, definitely. Because Beck, you're like, what is Beck talking about? Like, yeah, like.
I just remember something about hot dog dancing and burning down the trailer park with food stamps. And,
definitely. I
think Beck's dad was kind of in the Dadaist art scene, which was around this era where it was the whole purpose of Dadaism was nonsense. So I'm sure that had a lot of influence. But the lyrics on this song were just so far out.
Right.
It just kind of led to you paying more attention to it, trying to figure out what the heck.
Yeah. So it's a fantastic record. Blue Jay Way by George. It's all trippy, psychedelic.
Yeah.
It's good album. All right. Up next, John, we have released almost a full year later on November 22nd, 1968. This one is simply called The Beatles, otherwise known as the White Album. John, what do you think about the White Album?
It's one side two records too long. No, one record too long.
Yeah, isn't that what George Martin wanted to do? He was arguing with them. He's like, I think we should make this one album.
Yeah, this I remember listening to this. I got it on tape
Mhm.
right before a trip down to San Diego, road trip, going to my sister's wedding when I was in high school. And I think the tape was worn out by the time I got back because I didn't stop listening to it. And that's a long drive, dude.
Yeah.
We didn't stop. It was I think we slept in a rest stop for 3 hours.
Oh my God.
Robin just took a quick nap and just kept
Robin.
driving. Surprised we're still alive.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. So this album is loaded with classic Beatles songs. I mean, there's tons of songs. I don't know what there's like 28 songs or something like that on this album. It's wild. But it marks kind of like almost like the beginning of the end for the band.
Yep. Totally.
Because it's almost kind of like you're listening to a solo album by the guys, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And some of the songs on it are just some of the best songs they ever did. You know, you have the Paul songs, so, you know, like the Beach Boysy back in the USSR and the silly Obladi Oblada and Blackbird, Rocket Raccoon, and the heavy metal classic Helter Skelter.
Dude, that was so heavy.
Yeah, it's like wild. Like you listen to that song that, you know, next to the other songs that were coming out in 1968, it's heavy. It's heavy. So
yeah, his voice.
That preceded Black Sabbath by a couple of years. So now John, he's doing his classic, you know, somber kind of, you know, more serious, deep, serious stuff. Like Happiness is a Warm Gun, which is a fantastic song. I remember you used to play that song a lot. You're like, oh, this song's so good.
Bang, bang,
yeah.
Shoot, shoot.
Yep. And then, you know, another one that, you know, he's talking again about how he's so tired. He just wants to sleep, you know. And
oh, man.
And and then Your Blues. And yeah, he's getting kind of down again. He's trying to bring it down, but Paul's back. He's like, you know what? I'm not going to bring it down. I'm going to do some Obladi Oblada action on you, and we'll bring this back up. And then he's like, you know, and then Julia, you know, he's like written about his mom that was like actually killed and hit by a car in front of him. Jesus.
His whole like childhood is like just tragic.
Yeah, right? She was 44 years old and she like died right in front of him, like, or right in front of the house. It's like, oh, that's
right after he's like repairing
scary.
His relationship with her.
Yeah, right? Yeah, because, yeah, Jesus. Ugh. Some of my favorite tracks on this album, Dear Prudence.
Totally.
Happiness is a Warm Gun, as we mentioned. Obviously, While My Guitar Gently Weeps is just epic. And I'm a big fan of the Granny songs. I like Martha, My Dear, and Honey Pie. I like those songs. So anybody that wants to fight me, you know, I'll give you my address. So you come over and fight me. I'll you know, John Lennon wasn't a big fan of the Granny songs, but I like them. I like the Granny songs. No, but
how can you not, man? I loved Martha, My Dear for the longest time.
Yeah.
And then I found out it was a song about Paul's dog, and I lost all respect for it. I thought it was this like epic love song, and it was just so beautiful. Like tubas in the background.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's thinking about his dang dog. I'm like,
oh,
come on, dude. I mean, my dog's all right.
My brother would probably like it even more. He's like, oh, it's about his dog. It's fantastic. I like it even more. No, but if you had to take off, I heard this other guy talk about this album, and he posed a question. There's like two questions that were posed. So one was, if you had, well, this could be saved for another complete discussion here, but if you could make one album, what songs would you cut? But the other guy, he asked a question, if you could cut just 2 songs off this album and place on there 2 songs that weren't on the album, kind of like of the same era, what would you put on? And if you were to cut off, question. Right? And what would you, and I'll tell you what he said, and I'll tell you what my answer was before he even answered that. But if you had to take off like a couple songs, what songs would you take off?
So I'm definitely taking off Revolution Number 9. That song gave me nightmares, and it's just, it should have been released as like, I don't know, a side project or
right.
2 Virgins or something like that.
Yeah.
But what would I add? Something about Past Masters. What was coming out during that time?
Okay, so I immediately thought of, okay, you obviously take off Revolution Number 9. It's just, I get it. It's avant-garde. It's like just, can you imagine like George Martin going, guys, if I was 20 years younger, I'd kick your ass. You know what I mean? But okay, so my opinion was you take off Revolution Number 9 and you could even throw on there like, Hey Jude. Hey Jude came out in 68. And it came out a couple months earlier. And then you take off I'm not a huge fan of Good Night, so I immediately
That
thought
was
of
my second choice.
I thought of Good Night, and then you could take that off, and then you could put on the single Revolution.
Yes.
Right?
Take off. Yeah.
So you still have two Revolutions on there.
Song on there.
Yeah,
I was so sad when I got to Revolution.
Yeah, like you're like, wait a minute, you're ending it with this super sad, like depressing kind of like good night, and you're like, oh,
that song was so like syrupy. It sounded like they let Phil Spector produce.
Yeah, right.
Or Walt Disney, one of the two.
Exactly. So, anything else you want to add about the White Album? It's a good album, but again, I think it's kind of like you could kind of tell just by the structure of the songs and kind of like how they are. It's kind of like a solo album.
They're doing some of them are not even performing with the other Beatles on there. Happiness is a Warm Gun. John's doing his own backing vocals.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And isn't that the famous one where Ringo stormed out and Paul jumps down and just plays the drums on.
Yeah, he
couple
quit
songs
for a week during the making of this album. So Ringo was the first to quit.
I love that one. They were in a press conference. I think it was like 65, 66 or something like that. One of the reporters is like, is Ringo the best drummer in the world? And then like, I think it was John. He's like, he's not even the best drummer in the band. I always love that. He's such an asshole. Oh God. All right. So let's move on. Up next, we have another soundtrack album. These guys are pumping out soundtracks, man. Pumping out soundtracks. So released on January 13th, 1969, just a couple months after the White Album, we have the Yellow Submarine. So this side one of this record contains the actual songs from the cartoon movie, and side two had the musical score by George Martin. So this one's interesting because there's really only 4 new songs on this record. They had Yellow Submarine was from Revolver. The song All You Need Is Love was actually released as a single in the summer of 67. So, and then half of the new songs were both George Harrison tunes, Only Northern Song and It's All Too Much. And those are good songs. But then you have Paul's, just, I don't know what he's doing, this little ditty of All Together Now, which is, it's fun. 1, 2, 3, 4, can I have them all? It's fun. It's like you're around a campfire or something like that. But so clearly to me, the best song on this album, I don't think it's really any argument in my opinion. Even back then, I remember us like loving this song.
No question. I know
Hey
where
Bulldog.
you're going with this, and Hey Bulldog.
Yeah, it was just I was like, this song's so good. Oh my God. Yeah, it's like it's the song you immediately always go to on this album. I
said, this song should not have been dumped onto this soundtrack.
Right.
I mean, the heavy piano and the guitar solo. I mean, come on, man. It was almost, the song was practically lost into obscurity.
Yeah, it's awesome, man.
They go nuts at the end. They're barking and laughing.
Yeah, it's kind of like what's going on in the background right now. It's like, did you plan this? Yeah. Is there a dog barking in the background?
No, what are you talking about? That's not my dog. Must be Amazon, must be here.
Yeah, there you go. Awesome. But yeah, Paul's bass in the song is killer. John's vocals are freaking amazing. George nails the guitar solo. I think that's George playing the guitar.
Yeah, you don't know.
I know. I guess.
I was looking it up. I'm like, man, at this point in their career, you don't know who's playing what.
Yeah,
so
Paul getting fed up with everybody, and he's like, because Paul's such a great musician. He's like, just look, if you can't do it, then just take a break, and I'll you come back in 10 minutes, it'll be done. I'm like, Jesus Christ.
That sounds like a boss.
God, no, it's like
bad manager.
Everyone's like putting their hands up. Okay, everyone's tiptoeing around Paul at this point. Paul's all business at this point. No, but yeah, so. That's not going to be at the top of anybody's. If you watch any of these like countdown lists of all these like Beatles, greatest albums or the ranking of the Beatles albums or something, it's never going to be, in the top 5 because it's, half of it is George Martin.
Yeah.
We used a couple songs for one of our movies.
Yeah. Was it March of the Meanies?
I don't know. It's so awesome.
So good. Yeah. What did you think about the movie though?
The movie's fun. I think
I really love the movie.
Yeah, I think that's one of those movies that I saw the last time I saw it. Maybe I've seen clips of it since, but I saw it with you. Yeah, it's fun.
I traded this movie, the VHS movie, for a Nintendo 64 to my cousin a while back, and I was like, But the joke was on him because I already had a DVD copy. So I got a good deal out of that. Oh yeah, I really enjoyed the movie. I love the Edwardian style of everything. The like old high society looking British, all the like Easter eggs in the movie. And then the corny Beatles appearances at the end was like, they're trying to make it, I think, their last contractual film obligation. So they could get out of, they had like a 4-film deal or something like that.
And it's all colorful. It's fun. It's good. But like the album itself, it is what it is. It's not
half an album.
Yeah. So
maybe not even that.
Yeah, exactly. It's 4 songs or whatever.
Yeah.
All right. So moving on. All right. So the next album that the Beatles.
What are you gonna do here? I was wondering. So where are you gonna go?
So the next album the Beatles recorded was for the Get Back, Let It Be sessions.
Yes.
But
good man.
Those were not released until the following year. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna move on to one of the most successful records ever produced by the band. And that album was released on September 26, 1969. One of the most iconic album covers in the history of all music. And that album is Abbey Road. So, John, what do you think about Abbey Road?
Well, once I found out that it was actually recorded after Let It Be, I thought it was so
crazy?
Cool that they came back together after that disaster of, everybody getting mad at each other and just struggling. They came back together and they just knocked this album.
Oh, yeah.
Rocking. And
it's funny because I remember, who's the guy that is directing the new version of that movie? Peter
Jackson.
Peter Jackson, right? So he's saying like, he's going through those tapes and he's like, dude, whoever put that movie together, it's a lot different than they just showed all the bad, horrible parts, except for them jamming and stuff like that. He goes, but it's not like that at all. So I'm curious to see that new movie when it comes out.
To it.
But you're right. Boy, did they come together. And I mean, this album is it's amazing. First off, you just start with George Harrison. George Harrison, I mean, he probably had the 2 best songs possibly ever possibly the 2 best Beatles songs, and let alone his best songs. Something and Here Comes the Sun. Here Comes the Sun is like, I think I've read that it's the most popular Beatles song. If you look up like the most popular Beatles songs, it's the most popular Beatles song. And Something is one of the most popular covered Beatles songs of all time behind Yesterday.
But my 2 top choices on this album were Something and Here Comes the Sun. So it was
good.
It was weird choosing between 2 George songs.
Yeah.
It was like, hadn't had to do that before.
Oh, they're just so good. I mean, they're perfect. They're perfect songs. And
they basically had to beg George Martin to work with them again because he was fed up with them after the Let It Be, Get Back debacle, that they had to promise to be on their best behaviors.
Oh, gosh.
According to George Martin from the anthology sessions. I was like,
crazy.
Wow, I'm glad he agreed.
Oh, yeah. But John, he had like the bluesy songs on this one. Come Together, I Want You, which is kind of like, blues and almost like, I don't know.
Was there a little waltz or jazz in there? In
the
middle? I don't know what that.
Yeah. I want you. Ding, 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 ding. Yeah. And it's all grandiose. It's like, dun, 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 dun.
Yeah, dude, it builds up.
It's wild.
It's so loud and just
and then
heavy
just
at the
and then
end,
just stops.
And then it cuts, goes into Here Comes the Sun.
Yep.
You're like,
and that's
whoa.
And that's perfect too, because Here Comes the Sun starts off so like delicate and it's so perfect. Oh, it's so great.
It's like the sun coming out after like an epic storm or a tornado hits.
Yes, exactly. It's like that the house landed and then you open up the door and it's like, it's just all colorful and it's all happy and
Totally.
Then they have the super hippie vocal tune with Because, where they're all singing together. It's fantastic. Ringo even comes through the album with Octopus's Garden, which is like the second song he ever wrote. Yeah.
He wrote it while he had quit.
It's crazy.
Was taking a break from the band, and he wrote that song. And it's one of 2 Ringo songs.
Yeah.
It's like a logical successor to, Yellow Submarine. It's like they could they should be together on the same album almost.
Yeah, you listen to like Ringo's, like the best of Ringo, and it's like, oh, it's a children's album. Okay, like
Yeah,
yeah.
pretty much.
Yeah, and then and then again, this is another, Paul kind of like dominates this album where I mean he has like 7 of the tracks on this record. I mean, he had that awesome song, which is very underrated to me for the way he sings on this song, is "Oh Darling." I think that's like amazing. I think that John loved that song too, and I think I read that he wanted to actually sing that song, and Paul's like, no, I'm singing this one, because I could see John singing that song, right? I mean, like it's a very kind of like almost like a bluesy kind of song.
Yeah, that would be interesting.
And then George Martin pieced together "You Never Give Me Your Money," and then that whole second side.
Medley.
Yeah, the whole second side is nuts.
So Paul originally wanted the whole album to do that. John, he's like, he didn't want anything to do with it. So that's how the first 2 songs just kind of flow together. There are a couple songs on the early part of the album do that, and then the whole second half of the album do it. It's like, well, he got some of what he wanted.
Yeah, no, definitely. And it's awesome too, because like it is pretty cool the way they mix that together, and it just flows. And then it just ends with that. I mean, is there a better ending to the band for a last album than the end? That song is freaking amazing. It's amazing.
I'm still angry that they left Her Majesty on after that, and that comes on. I'm like,
that's weird.
So originally they put that on the end of the reel, one of the guys in the studio, just because they were saving it, and it got left on accident, and it wasn't even on the track list. Originally it went between I think it went right before Polythene Pam. So if you listen to the beginning, it's the end note from Polythene Pam or something like that. I heard a mix of it, and I was like, oh my god, it was right in that medley, it would have fit great in there. But they put it after the end and made me mad. But that guitar solo.
Oh, where they're trading off.
Oh man, when they're trading off,
it's
Ringo's
insane.
Only like drum solo.
Everybody shines on that. It's the perfect ending to a perfect career for the band. Yeah. You couldn't have written it better. It's perfect. It's perfect.
I don't even think they knew. I mean, they probably had a good feeling, but I'd like to think that they all just set down their instruments, walked out, went about their way.
Yeah, it's awesome, man. Like, and I've seen
guys for the decade. I'll see you around.
Yeah, it's so good. Yeah. So, all right. So we're gonna move on, John. We're gonna do it. All right. So, last album on the list. The last album. Here we go. Released on May 8th, 1970. The only album to actually be produced by someone other than George Martin, and that album is Let It Be. So
yeah, that was their first mistake.
Yeah. So produced by the famous or infamous the Wall of Sound creator, Phil Spector himself. So John, what do you think about the very last album in the Beatles catalog to be released?
I really did not like Phil's what he did to the album, and hearing all the other versions, I feel like piecing it back together with all how it should have been would have made it so much better.
I could not agree with you anymore, because when McCartney re-released Let It Be Naked in 2003, I was like, oh my god, this would have been amazing like this. Like, it would have been amazing, but because like Paul didn't have any say in that album, but John Lennon gives credit where credit is due to Phil Spector, in that he went through all the tapes and picked, whatever he could out of that, pile of tapes and selected those songs. But what he did to those songs, I mean, like you said,
that's why he's in prison now.
Yeah. What, didn't he die? Didn't he just die?
I don't know.
I don't know. So anyway, but look, there's obviously some fantastic tracks on here as always, but sure. I mean, it's the Beatles, right? So like, but I feel that the 3 original singles that George Martin first produced with Get Back, Across the Universe, and Let It Be, those were already singles that were already released. Those had already come out as, George Martin produced singles. They are far better and stronger than the ones on the album that Phil Spector did. And I think my biggest problem with this album is that, he completely ruined The Long and Winding Road. Like,
Yep.
if you hear Paul McCartney's like how he wanted it to be released later on that Let It Be Naked,
I
so
didn't like it till I heard that version.
Oh, I'm with you. I always thought it was weird. I was like, what? Why? Because back then you don't realize why things are different. You know what I mean? Like we didn't.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we paid attention to, George Martin didn't produce this, but it never sounded right. I'm like, I don't know why this doesn't sound right. I should like it. It's a Beatles song, right? And it just didn't sound right. You're like, it's overproduced with like a weird sounding orchestra, and it was a number one hit, but it's a number one hit because it was a good song to start with, in my opinion. You know what I mean?
I think one good exception though on this album is Let It Be. So we got the guitar solo on Let It Be versus the organ solo on the Past Masters version.
Yeah,
and that guitar solo is something. I'll Let It Be. Some
of the things that I didn't like about this album is stuff that George Martin would have just completely cut out. Like all the just chatter, all the crap that, is like, I mean, first off, take off Dig It and Maggie May, get those off there.
Yeah.
It's just, they don't need to be on there.
Just
like
snippets, they're outtakes.
And remember when you were talking about earlier how you couldn't believe that I can't remember the song that you were talking about wasn't on one of the albums, but this is a perfect example of like they had complete room to put on Don't Let Me Down on this album.
One of my favorites.
And they did not put this on. They did not put that on. They did. What? How is that on here?
The whole rooftop concert should have been on there.
Exactly. Wow.
It was in the movie.
Yes.
Come on, man.
Don't Let Me Down is one of the greatest Beatles, especially one of the greatest later Beatles songs, and that's not included on this album. That's criminal. That's criminal.
Billy Preston.
Yeah.
Billy Preston in like, probably 3 songs, maybe more. It's rocking the organ. Last minute addition to the group. And
Exactly. Yeah, so George Martin would have taken off all the, dialogue, background noise. I mean, some of these songs you just want them to start, like a Beatles song, right? And you're like, oh, okay, I guess it's not starting until
it's over now.
Oh, okay.
We're started.
Yeah. Okay.
It was like listen to the anthology.
Right.
Or there was an anthology.
Yeah, put those on the anthology. 25 years later, you could put those, on the anthology. But yeah, so I guess, I mean, look, as that album stands, some people love that album. Some people, it's like one of their favorite albums, right? Yeah. Now, for a Beatles album, I don't think it's one of their strongest albums. I think it's one of their weaker albums. But if you're talking about any other band, it'd be like their greatest album ever.
Right.
So
I think a lot of people probably just like getting that look into the raw Beatles. Their, just
stripped down.
Look into the studio, what they were doing and how they were doing it.
Yeah, you could save that for the movie.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, put that in the movie.
To hear it through the album.
Yeah, exactly.
One thing I thought was really cool is their version of One After 909. Just the duality of hearing them perform a song from, was it 62 or 63 when they originally wrote that and never did anything with it?
Yeah. They said it was one of their first songs, I guess.
Yeah,
that they did.
1970, they're performing this.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. And look, there's great songs on this album. Like I Mean Mine, and that's one of the songs that what's his name should get credit for, by the way, because like he loop that song and like he extended it to like 3 minutes or something like that. It was originally like a minute and 20 seconds or something, and then he like extended that. But Two of Us, great song. I Got a Feeling, great song.
I Got a Feeling, love it.
Those are great. There's some great songs on here, but it's just the production not my favorite, and you could tell that George Martin is sorely missed, in my opinion. You could differ.
Our opinion.
Yeah. All right. So John, here we go. It's time. The moment we've all been the moment that we've all been waiting for. What is the greatest Beatles album of all time? So, here's what we're going to do. We're going to start with our number 4 picks. And I'm just going to, I'm just going to start it off, John. I'm going to lay it all out there. I have my criteria. This, like you said at the very beginning, you have your own criteria, which you have to do because how are you supposed to make essentially a Sophie's choice on this? Like, I mean, look, except, none of these albums are going to die in the end, but you do have to pick out your favorite child. So, so that's what we're going to do. So for me, just for me, I had to break this down song for song. Like, what albums hold up the strongest overall where I would never even think of skipping a track. So with that reasoning, obviously for me, just for me, I'd take off Yellow Submarine due to side B. I'm never listening to side B.
Yeah.
And I'm going to take off Let It Be just because, we just discussed that. We know, everyone knows how we feel about that album. So I think that their first two albums are super strong, and that's a clear reason why they're so big. I mean, they had great songs. Being cute and charming only goes so far. I mean, you want proof? Just ask Sean Cassidy and Leif Garrett. I mean, you have to have the songs. They have to be good. So John, for my number 4 runner-up selection, the album that started everything off for me, and this was the very first piece of Beatles music that was ever given to me as a present, as I mentioned previously. 20 years after the album was actually released, and God, it sounds like a long time ago, but it wasn't, because when we were in high school, it was longer than that. But that album for me is Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, which is kind of criminal, even for me saying that out of my own mouth. But again, all these could be interchanged in my opinion. So it's so legendary. How can it not be on this type of list? It's usually, in the top 10 for best albums ever. And it just goes to show you again, how good the Beatles are. So how about you, John? What do you have for your number 4?
I would have to say this, and this was hard because, like you said, the easily interchangeable.
Yeah.
I'm about to go with Help.
Help. Love Help.
Yeah. Yeah. It was like starting to bridge that early sound to the middle sound.
Yep.
And I've always been a huge fan of the middle era.
Yeah. And you throw in the movie? You love the movie?
Yeah. You throw in the movie. I love the movie. And just, it really, their music was getting really more interesting and complex at this point. So
yeah, that's definitely when they started doing some different stuff, and they're still fun. They're still fun, but you know what? Now they're starting to get a little serious. They're a little more serious.
Mm-hmm.
A little more incorporating some Dylan in there and some different instruments, and
different drugs.
Solid, yeah, solid. All right, so here we go. Moving on to the top 3. So for my number 3 album, it's just, I hate making this list. It's just terrible. Okay, so the album that I have with quite possibly the greatest backing vocals ever recorded in history. The album is Rubber Soul. And at one point, Rubber Soul was my number 1 album of all time. Again, these all change. I mean, remember we used to listen to the Beatles so much, you're like, okay, we need to listen to something else. I'm getting Beatle burnout over here. I'm like, yeah, that can happen with any band, but but this is probably, in my opinion, it's the biggest leap musically, in my opinion.
Yeah, for sure.
And everything about this album is just so good. It could have easily been number 1 for me, but I have this at my number 3 selection. How about you, John? What do you have at number 3?
Well, it was going to be this or Revolver.
Mm.
And as much as I'd like to put Revolver higher, I'm going to go with that as my number 3. It's basically one step beyond Rubber Soul. Rubber Soul still had a few early sounds to it.
Yeah.
Revolver is just that much more mature and experimental.
Has a little bit more edge.
Yeah, and the songs are all over the place.
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah, it's literally like a roller coaster, but like the best roller coaster that you've ever been on.
Yeah.
It's awesome. It's so good. So yeah, that's a great number 3. Okay, so here we are. We're closing in on our top picks for the greatest Beatles albums of all time, which is a pretty ridiculous list to make. But anyway, we're doing it anyway. So coming in at number 2, my number 2 selection. This one was the grand finale for the band as a collective unit. And my selection is known as the album Abbey Road. It had the 2 best George songs. I don't think that's really debatable. I mean, those are classics.
Oh, yeah.
They're perfect. And the music was just, it not only was the music so modern sounding, but it was tight, it was produced well, and they rocked out, man. And they closed that out. That should have been the, if they didn't end their career with the song The End, a better justifiable song could have been Let It Be off the last released one. But of course they didn't do that. They didn't end it with that, of course, because, Phil Spector. Anyway, Jesus. Okay. So that's what I had at my number 2 selection. So yeah, it just the end of that song, the way it just ends with like everybody just jamming. It's so good. Oh, it's so fantastic. I wish there was like video of them doing that in the studio.
Another 2 minutes of that.
Right. I know. I could listen to that forever. Oh, it's so good.
The extended version of that song on the anthology, though, I'm glad they cut it down because it added like a little bit of just kind of nothing in between the drums and then the solo.
You could tell that they were like doing a lot of looping and taking sampling from other, like, I think they actually said that too. Like, this is a sample of, take 1 and take 6. And I'm like, oh, okay. Like, okay.
How do you do that back then?
Okay. But hearing Abbey Road makes you understand why people were so devastated when they announced their breakup the following year. I mean, can you imagine like the Beatles breaking up? You're like, what? Are you kidding me? They just made Abbey Road and Let It Be. But they made Abbey Road.
Yeah. Half of them, at least, I know Paul and George did. I can't remember but they all had solo albums out the same year.
Right. Yeah, totally.
John quit the band before the album was even released. Abbey Road.
It's so crazy, man. Yeah.
It devastates me, and I wasn't alive during that era.
And you want to talk about how good the songs are. I mentioned this earlier, too. These songs off of Abbey Road, especially Abbey Road, those are played along like classic rock songs from the late 70s and the 80s. And they mix in perfectly. That's how good and modern these songs are. So when people say the Beatles were overrated, I'm sorry, you're not educated because
you're undereducated.
Well, yeah, whoever your favorite band is, ask them if the Beatles are overrated, and they'll probably laugh in your face. I mean, seriously. Okay, so who is sitting at your number 2 selection, John?
So I'm going with Sgt. Pepper. I mean, I love the music. It's amazing. What I also loved even more was the personality the album took on. The their costumes, the production of the album cover, the little cutouts of the mustaches on the original release. You could be Sgt. Pepper at home too. Gotta buy the album.
I forgot about that.
Yeah, I mean, talk about,
and it had all their idols on it. So cool. Such a cool album. You could just stare at that album for like a day.
And it's like, that's when I was like starting to get into the Paul is dead conspiracy, and I just love those little clues.
Right.
Backwards hidden messages, cranberry sauce.
Yeah, Fall McCartney. Yeah.
So I just love that whole beyond the music.
Yeah.
It's just the whole
it's so good. Yeah, I mean, you can't say enough about it. We could do a whole podcast just on that album alone. I mean, yeah. So solid choice again. The top 5 albums are all like their top 5 albums.
Yeah.
Anyway, all right. So, John, what did you have as the greatest Beatles album of all time?
So there's going to be some rehash here, but Abbey Road, number 1 for me.
So
just the idea that they came off of the Let It Be sessions, Get Back sessions, and put this album out is got something to say that how quickly they could slap together just masterpieces.
Right. And John even said that. Yeah, he even said that. He's like, it's a good album. It's even as much as everyone was butting heads at the end and everything.
Yeah.
They came together collectively and made one of the greatest albums in history. So it's mind blowing how great it is.
It's like the top of their game. Like, it may not have a lot of the crazy studio tricks from Pepper, but just lyrically, the depth of the songs and how powerful they are.
Yeah, and I keep going back to how modern it sounds. You could play that album, almost all the songs you could play against anything that came out the next decade, you know? And
Yeah.
and it almost was kind of like a precursor to classic rock in general. I mean, obviously they play songs from Sgt. Pepper and other albums and stuff like that on classic rock stations, but I mean, you're always going to have, you know, Come Together and, you know, all those like great songs from Abbey Road that are going to be played on classic rock radio for the existence of time. So
Yeah, and then out of nowhere, you got Maxwell Silver Hammer song about a serial killer. You know, you listen to these songs about the sun, and
how come Ringo didn't sing that song, by the way?
well, they probably kicked him out of the band at the time. I don't know. It was a little too dark for Ringo.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. He's like, oh. They proposed it to Ringo, and he's like, woo, whoa, really, dude? Like, don't you have don't you have another like Submarine song or something I could sing? Or I mean, I'm already singing an octopus song over here.
Can we change it to an animal? And it's got one of my best, probably little snippets of a Beatles song in there, and I've always loved this. I would play it over and over, and anyone who was probably around me at the time probably hated it. But the part on "You Never Give Me Your Money," where it goes into that little part where Paul goes, "One sweet dream,"
yes,
the guitar kicks in.
Oh, it's so good.
Starts the guitar like solo starts to build up.
Oh, it's such a great song.
Yeah,
that's a great song.
Continues on to the medley, and then you're just on this roller coaster ride to the end. And
exactly.
You'll land right on the end.
Exactly.
And then you turn it off before Her Majesty comes on.
Well, if you make a mixtape, you could just cut it off, and you could just end it right there. Yeah.
Do you even make mixtapes anymore?
I don't think so.
You did all your YouTube compilations, which are really amazing. But I mean, I miss it, and it was great fun.
Yeah. All right, dude. So I'm going to move on to my selection for the #1 greatest Beatles album of all time.
I'm salivating.
And for me, this album it had it all. It's one of the greatest albums ever made. I don't know if there are any real weak tracks on here. And the musical innovations and experimental songs are flat out home runs. And it's quite possibly their finest hour as collaborators. John and Paul, they're working perfectly together. And the album for me is Revolver. And Revolver, like you said, it's like a step up as a follow-up to Rubber Soul. And think about this. The various genres in general on this one album, they had garage rock, like with Taxman. They had art rock, Eleanor Rigby. They had psychedelic rock with Tomorrow Never Knows and I'm Only Sleeping, and Eastern Indian inspired rock with Love You Too, and soft rock, one of the best soft rock songs ever made, Here, There, and Everywhere.
Yeah.
They had novelty songs like Yellow Submarine, and acid rock with She Said, She Said, and pop rock with Good Day Sunshine and For No One, and just straight up rock like Dr. Robert. And then you can't leave out the R&B soul Motown-esque Got to Get You Into My Life. So I just think it's a perfect album, like a perfect mix of the Beatles at their creative peak. The creative peak kind of like lasts a while with the Beatles.
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah. So
I think if it wasn't for my emotional ties to Abbey Road and just the whole idea of it being their final album, that would definitely be my top album.
Yeah, it's awesome, man. Like I said, dude, this is a ridiculous list. Like these albums they're all special for different reasons. Like it's such a hard list to make because it's like, oh wait, but I love that album too, man. Like and like their early albums they're all, like I said, they could have been the greatest albums ever made if they weren't the Beatles. You know what I mean? Like they're all so good. All of them. They're all amazing for different reasons.
I was darn near putting I almost put Please Please Me on as my alt just because the first album and what it did
for music in general.
Yeah,
it's crazy. It's insane. It's insane how good it is. And you know what? Revolver is also the first CD I ever bought. That's the first CD.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I bought like a 70s compilation, and then I bought Revolver. So like it was so that could have something to do with it. But for years we'd be driving around and I'd be like, like songs like You Won't See Me would come on. And I just remember just singing the backup vocals in that.
Oh yeah.
Oh, so
That's
good.
what I thought of too. As soon as that I was re-listening to that song. I was like, I could hear you singing the
Oh, so good.
backup vocals, and
In songs like that, I would rather sing the backup vocals. I'd rather be George in that song than I would Paul. So
that's hilarious. Yeah, they're so good that you'd rather not even be the lead person in the song.
Yeah.
And I wish I was playing the bass on that track. It's so good.
Exactly.
Some of my favorites are not even the singing or the lyrics. It's
the little
Ringo
things.
drum.
Yep.
You know?
It's the little things, man. It's the little things. Well, we could literally talk about the Beatles and all this stuff for hours. I mean, seriously. I mean, there's so much stuff to talk about the Beatles, but I thought it would be fitting to start with a Beatles episode as far as, talking about music with you. I hope you enjoyed doing this episode as much as I did. Because
I haven't put more work into something since, I can't even remember.
College?
Since I built my chicken coop. I probably put more work into this than chicken coop.
Oh, that's hilarious. All right. So now that we've come up with our list, we want to know what you guys think. What do you think of our picks? Were they spot on? Were they way off? I mean, John and I, we want to hear from you. Right, John? We kind of want to hear everyone's opinions.
Oh, yeah, man. And don't forget where Josh lives. For those who want to fight him. If you need backup, give me a call. I'll get some of Franco's discount airline tickets. Come on down.
And on top of that, we want to hear your choices for the greatest Beatles albums of all time. And if you want to get crazy, if you want to get really crazy, give us your top full 13 albums.
You know my name.
Yeah.
Look up the number.
Oh, look at that. Look at that. Yeah. So from favorite to least favorite, you can give us your top picks. And John, this has been a lot of fun.
Everybody's got a favorite.
Yep. Everybody's got a favorite, man. Everybody's trying to beat my baby. Yeah.
Nice.
So
I see what you did there.
all right, John. Well, until next time, because there will be a next time. We're gonna do this again.
Thanks so much for inviting me on.
Absolutely.
I had a great time.
Absolutely. Well, all you Beatle maniacs out there, let us know what you think. Have a great night, John, and listen to some Beatles.
Now it's time to say goodnight.
All right. Talk to you later, man.
Hey, bye.
Bye. Thank you for tuning in to the Josh and Friends podcast. If you have any questions or comments about today's show, feel free to leave a message in the comment section below. If you enjoy listening to the podcast, please make sure to hit that subscribe button and follow the show. And check out some of the video clips posted on YouTube and Facebook. I'm Josh, and thank you for being a friend.